I think she's an infinitely better artist than Britney Spears, and I think she's a talented. I think she's a very talented businesswoman. But if I can try to explain it to you here, all of these all of these Dan Brown, Holy Blood, Holy Grail stuff, all of these kind of false ideas, all of these, like false notions of what life, post 2012 ought to be about. Sort of I tried to, if I can try to explain it, that she was my symbol for that process, that she was my metaphor, M. And we, our naked humanity, are in some ways Britney Spears.
Interesting.
Who is being overshadowed by this dark principle, who is trying to manipulate us, who is trying to change our belief systems, and that's what all this is about. That's the key to all of this. It's about our belief systems, and our duty is to shake that thing off. I can't express it any better than that. We have to shake Madonna off.
So this is about considering what Britney then went through, a very dark period in a way, totally, rebirthing.
Absolutely, that rebirthing is how I like to view it myself. Now, I'm hoping that I'm making sense in spite of all my, sort of speech defects and limitations, but I sense I am.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, there's so many. I totally agree. This is an interesting story, and I mean, again, we can. And another theme again about again, this is very much about the Virgin and the Goddess and all of this, but
yes, precisely.
How about the Scarlet Thread or the
Scarlet Thread, my friend?
The Lady in Red.
The Lady in Red.
Tell us about it.
Thank you. Yeah, well, kind of what happened with the Lady in Red, that was something, again, that was going back maybe 4 or 5 months ago now, that I was becoming, very aware of this archetype. Not a great deal to say apart from, how did that come about? As I recall now, that was through my investigations of Rosslyn Chapel.
Yeah.
And also through some of Jake Kotze's work, which was very inspirational at the time. And again, I take my hat off to him because he's done a superb work.
Indeed.
And it was the idea, and of course it was only symbolic, only because there are lots of people who at some point in their life wear red. So it's purely a kind of like symbolic pointer in the same way that the M is and MM is. But nonetheless, I was tracking sort of some examples of largely famous individuals.
Scarlett Johansson being one, I guess.
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
We had Britney Spears. We had many sort of similar type examples. And I was seeing it as a kind of metaphor for the bloodline. And again, that takes me. I'm trying to remember myself now what I wrote about the bloodline,
Sure.
But that was the idea. Not so much, and this is very important. This is sort of what separates me from just about every other researcher out there. And I think humbly I submit to you that I've got it right here.
Yeah.
Simply because lots of researchers. Including the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and so on.
Sure.
Talk about talk about blood.
Yeah.
And talk about it in this very literal sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you look at their agenda, always look deeper at what they're saying. Yes, they're beautiful ideas. I love those ideas, my friend. I get very excited about those ideas because who wouldn't? It's a beautiful. It is a wonderful. It's a wonderful, extremely complicated, sort of pattern that they're weaving. But if you look underneath at what their agenda is, same with Dan Brown, it's always coming back. It's always sort of leading back in sort of 2 or 3 sort of particular directions. And it's actually what it's really trying to tell you is that certain people are actually inherently much better than others.
That's right.
Certain people are more are actually more king-like,
Yep.
sort of kingly and closer to God than you.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we must listen and sort of do what they say.
Yeah. I mean, this feels, in a way, almost if you look at it and bring it into both a political and religious context, it's very much about even who is supposed to inherit the earth here, considering
Precisely,
that,
my friend.
yeah.
Who is supposed to inherit the earth?
Yeah.
Indeed, that is what it's about. That is what it's about. And and so, I'm. How can I put this? All of these ideas I find are helpful, and they're leading us somewhere, and they are leading us in a. I think all of these ideas have something of the truth in them, but it's a question of sifting through it and finding, sort of finding something which, actually empowers us rather than, sort of strips our power from us.
That's right. I totally agree. I want to return a little bit talking more about the crop circles. Are you out in the field, so to speak? Anything? Are you out there looking at these? You are, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, my friend Jake Kotze is sort of coming over here and spending some time with me in about 2 weeks' time. And, and one of the things which we're going to do, whilst we're out here, is to spend a lot of time out there in the circles.
Nice.
So, hopefully either he or I at some point, sort of might have some information,
from out there.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you feel? I mean, people have explained earlier when they are in these circles and so forth that there is, more energy, so to speak, energetically heightened and so forth. Have you experienced anything like this when you're out there?
Yeah, I have. I mean, how I can put it to you best, maybe. I mean, I spoke earlier about my sensations when I was up there on Temple Mount, which was a luminous experience, and certainly not. I haven't experienced anything of that intensity in the fields, but nonetheless, if you can take that down a few notches, that's how I feel in those circles. And I think in part that's because of the beautiful sort of scenery which surrounds us when we're there.
Sure.
Out there in Wiltshire, down in Albion, my friend, which is it's a holy county, but then equally all of Great Britain is sacred and quite possibly, and quite possibly Israel. But
by the way, do you know if Albion in any way is related to albino, considering all the chalk mountains and stuff that is there?
Well, that's in it. That's very interesting, and I suspect that it is. I hadn't thought about it before, but certainly, many ancient sites in Great Britain are named, like Alban is very important, like St Albans and so on. So I think there is something in that, certainly, this sort of connection between Albion and this whiteness.
Yeah, because I guess a few researchers have connected it with the even the considering that there's a lot of crop circles in the UK and England, and especially around that area, of course. But even with, of course, we have the ley lines connection and all of this. But what about Stonehenge? Have you been up there recently?
Stonehenge, I haven't been to, but the other one, sort of down there in Wiltshire. It's Avebury.
Avebury, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I've spent many hours, sort of many hours in the field there, and like Silbury Hill, of course, is very nearby, and
sure,
and also West Kennet Longbarrow, which sort of ties in with my recent article about Jerry McCann, only because I opened that piece with that photo there from that crop circle that was right next door. It was right there on West Kennet Longbarrow.
Really?
And if I can fill you in on what this long barrow is, I suspect you know, but if anybody doesn't know, it's an ancient portal, it's an ancient doorway. How can I describe what a long barrow is? It's a chamber, it's an ancient Neolithic ritual, or some would say burial chamber, take your pick. And here, right next door to it, was this highly symbolic, extremely attractive sort of glyph, which clearly showed this sense of walking down a checkered board floor. sort of walking down into the doors of perception. And many people have commented on that beautiful synchronicity, that here we have this long barrow, which is a hole in the earth, sort of somewhere where you go inside, and it influences your consciousness. And then sort of right next door is this sense of the doors of perception in the field. It's such a beautiful and perfect pattern. I found, I'm very excited about that crop circle. I think it's stunning, actually.
Yeah. I mean, definitely interesting looking at. I couldn't figure it out at first, kind of wondering what the heck am I looking at here. I could pick out the checkerboard, as you say, but in a sense it looked like almost like a hall of servers or bookshelves in a way, but some even compared it to an image down in Egypt. Don't know if it was Dendera or if it was another temple down there. I'm not sure yet, but definitely interesting stuff. Do you know if this is one of the most recent big ones? I mean, overall, do you know if the activity down there, considering regarding crop circles and so forth?
Yeah, well, I can tell you a little bit about sort of this season, because I've been watching it very closely, and last season. Now, the interesting thing about 2006, 2007 in crop circle lore, and it's kind of it's sad in a way, but actually what we're seeing now is the kind of falling off of this phenomenon.
Really?
Yes. If you sort of track back to sort of 2003. There was some magnificent, and I mean truly magnificent, crop circles which were produced, and sort of 2006 had one or two, certainly one I'm thinking of in my mind that I have a very clear picture of, which I visited. Certainly that would compare with anything that's gone before, but so far this season, and it's starting to get a little bit late now because we're heading towards mid-July, and ordinarily now we've got another 4 weeks probably left, I would say. And certainly nothing on the scale of the sort of back in the earlier part of this decade have we seen yet. And people have been speculating, and I think there's something in it, that actually this miracle has actually worked its particular magic and is now possibly moving on elsewhere. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if you start seeing more crop circles over there in Northern Europe, or possibly in the United States, or somewhere other than Great Britain. I couldn't tell you. I'm not 100% sure of that, obviously, but so that's my sense, and it's certainly, I think, one that's shared by pretty much every researcher I've spoken to on the subject.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it it's something to do with consciousness, these crop circles.
Yeah.
Clearly some of them are made by man and humans and women, and I tend to think that we sort of need to get away from this sort of dichotomy which exists.
We'll continue talking with Ben in the subscriber section now, and we'll begin to speculate a little bit more about crop circles, M and the 2012 phenomena. We'll also talk about the unconscious versus the conscious conspiracy, the RFIDing of the Glastonbury Festival and their pyramid stage, and then we'll get into some really good stuff about the reptilian connection. So do join us in the subscriber section for the excellent continuation of this interview with Ben Fairhall. Also, before we finish this segment, do check out Ben's blog. It's ben-fairhall.blogspot.com, and there you'll find links to the Daily Behemoth and much more of Ben's excellent writing. A big thanks to Fredrik for handling the audio. We will be back on Sunday again with guest Jean Matlock on the topic of ancient cultures and much more. Until then, take good care. This is Henrik Palmgren. The website is redicecreations.com. Welcome. This is Red Eyes Radio.